Australians are now, actually they were second. I think now they're the worst textile waster and consumer globally per capita, which was part of the reason why we decided to start Shopfront, because the core problem, the overarching problem statement was that there was way too much waste in Australia. And like, that's a mind-blowing fact. I think it takes a certain type of person to go through the fundraising journey. Like, it's not fucking easy by any means. It's probably the most difficult thing I've ever gone through. People just assume it's way too easy to start a brand, and that's a problem. Think of the thousands and millions of people who have started businesses and just thrown away or had to get rid of their stock that they couldn't sell. Finding a big opportunity where you can have a very small and niche product to begin with, and then defining what the path is to get to the big opportunity is like, yeah, it's an art in itself, I think.
Before we get into this episode, I just want to thank you for being here. I started this podcast to spark conversations that inspire, creatively, personally, and everything in between. So if you'd like to support that mission, the best way is to hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you're watching or listening to this. That'll help other creative minds discover us, and also ensures that you won't miss any of the incredible guests that we've got coming up. Because when this passion is shared, it grows exponentially. So thank you, and now let's get stuck into it. Like with fashion, because you've been in it, you've been in the thick of it. Does it feel as though that it's accelerating quicker? Is it? So to me, it feels like it's accelerating quicker, and that's only because I'm on the outside of it.
As in the trends?
Trends.
Yes and no. I feel like there's micro trends now, which I don't think there was so much of back then. So like because you've got social media, so much influence and all that, people jump onto like one specific style of a creator, and that might last like 3 to 6 months and then die off, which back then trends would last like 5-10 years or like longer, right? But I think people catch on to that. Like some people, like I don't think everybody's moving at that speed, but I also think that now there's so much in the market that people are trying new things, because it's so easy to like penetrate the fashion market now as opposed to back then. So you're obviously going to get a unique mix of people coming into the game and trying new things. I think people steer towards that as well. But yeah, I mean, I tried to stick to my lane, to be honest. I don't think I ever tried to like be super out there creatively, like even personally and with the brands I made.
Yeah.
And that might have like been part of the reason why they weren't fully successful either, is because it was maybe too basic or too vanilla, where I think you kind of need to stand above and rise above now.
Ooh, that's a tough one, man. I think that there is a space, there is a place for ones that are trying to be more reserved and to be a bit more subtle in their approach.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I think that's a more saturated market, obviously.
But the subtle ones that are just trying to play it too safe?
Or like basics or track pants and a hoodie, like or t-shirt, and when you got that like 90 to 95% of brands have that classic combination.
Right. Everyone's got
just
it. Everyone's
hoodies,
got it,
t-shirts, and joggers. And if you stay like brands do that really fucking well, but if you try and stay in that lane, it's like very hard to stand above the rest, because how much can you push that creatively, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah. That's kind of where I I fell into that trap, I think, where it was like you try to put something out that's a little bit different and it doesn't get the right attention, and then you just go back into your shell and like create the basic stuff again.
But there has to be an element of really sticking it out when you're trying to do something different and to kind of push the point, because it's one of those things that when, like, even just let's take it back, if you're trying to do something creatively different, it's going to be jarring. First impressions. One of the benefits with fashion is, one of the virtues of fashion is that people are always looking to differentiate themselves. Just based on personalities being quite, we are individuals in our own right, and we're trying to find a way of expressing that outwardly. So when we're trying to find fashion now, it caters to all these little subcultures and subcultures within subcultures, and gives us the opportunity to be more individual with our expression, then shouldn't that then present opportunities for like clothing brands to then try little shifts rather than having to push things too far?
Yeah, but as a like, it's kind of easier said than done, because as a creator of the brand, you've got like your brand at risk. You kind of like, you might not actually fuck with that style that you want to, like, you might feel a bit more reserved in your style as well. So like, it depends on who's running the brand too. But yeah, I mean, going back to your question, I do think things change like at pace now. Like, I think things like new things are popping up left, right, and center, and that creates more opportunity. But you need to be like fully invested in understanding where the opportunity is, and not like be too late to a trend or kind of.
Yeah, of course.
Because you can shoot yourself in the foot with development time and design time, and just like it takes 60 to 90 days can take, you know, up to 6 months for like a full cycle from like tech pack all the way to you getting your order. Can take a year if the sampling doesn't go right. And if you jump on a trend too late, it's taken 12 months for you to get the product.
Yeah,
and
right.
that product doesn't suit like I saw a reel today of a brand owner who was like, guys, I actually quite like this reel too. I was like, guys, I fucked up. I got jorts made. It took me like 12 months to get them all figured out. Now I've slowly started hearing that jorts are going out. Like, can I get your opinion on this? And I was like, shit, yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Because it's not as easy as just like, oh, I've designed it, got the big order coming the next day. It's like a full-on process if you do it right.
So now someone like him will have an excess of jorts and needs it needs to move it.
Exactly. So that's, I guess, a problem with the fast trends, right? Because things go, like, people just buying all the time.
Yeah.
And because things are going out of fashion, which is why I kind of like to keep my style a little bit more reserved.
Yeah.
Or like, I'm not going to say I dress timeless because that's cringe, but like I try to buy and wear things that aren't like too faddy, which is why I actually opt in for vintage and secondhand, because vintage and secondhand have generally stood the test of time. And a lot of it's been a trend for a long time. People were wearing vintage for 20, 30, 40 years.
Vintage
right?
in and of itself is a look.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's not going to be it's not, like Carhartt jackets and all that are still as cool now as they were 50, like 30, 40 years ago, right?
Probably cooler. Because
Probably cooler, exactly.
Then it was an actual, it was
Workwear.
It had utility.
Yeah.
And now it's fashion.
Now you can wear it with rips, and the more rips it's got, the more expensive it is. It's like,
yeah. So, all right. We have this excess of clothes. The turnover is ridiculous. It's disgusting. And I saw in a chat that you had that we have on average, $7,000 worth of unused or untouched wares in the household.
It's not clothes. It's like anything. So like electrical goods, sporting goods, furniture.
I'd say at least 7,000, man.
Yeah.
I think that's probably undervaluing a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, some people have less than others, obviously, but some people would have like 50 to 100 grand of stuff, right? I actually have spoken to people who have full sheds on farms of like clothes that they've collected over the years. That, like, you think of kids' clothes, like you've got kids. How often do you have to buy a new outfit for them because they just grow so fast?
Actually, kids, that's an interesting one because they do the rounds.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're if you're the unlucky one within your group of friends or in family to have the kid first, that you're buying a lot of shit and people are buying you a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Now you have all this new stuff and they're going to outgrow it within days, weeks. So you will hold on to it, but then you'll just pass it around.
So that's good.
Most kid stuff gets moved around quite a lot. And thankfully, kids don't really move or do much, babies that is. So there's a lot of longevity.
Yeah.
And
they don't care about the color and the style, do they?
I mean, like, not really. Well, yeah, you kind of do, but they're fine. Like Bonds, their kids range is quite impressive. Like, it's got a lot of shit that I'll be like, that'd be cool to have like an adult onesie in that.
Yeah.
But no, they move around quite a fair bit, so they get a lot of repurposing.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the only few examples I've heard of.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people generally like throw away or just like,
they throw away their kids' clothes?
I've heard that it's a problem in communities quite a lot. Like, I imagine you don't have friends that have kids as well, right? Like, you can take the salvos or something, I guess. But
I suppose so, man. But I guess, like, it's just part of the age, right? Like, you get to a certain age and a lot of the people within your circle of your network of friends and family that are having kids around about more or less the same time. Like we have an 8-year-old and a 1-year-old. So having that big age gap between the two of them, the clothes before it came back to our 1-year-old probably went through.
Oh, so you got clothes from your 8-year-old back to your 1-year-old?
Yeah.
Oh,
and we're
cool.
talking like maybe 2 or 3 other kids
that's cool.
before it came back. So that's how it worked in our circumstance. Aubrey, our 1-year-old, he's got hardly any new shit. Like even everything has been second.
Would you feel? So I feel like there's a stigma in secondhand still in Australia, but coming to kids' clothes, do you think, like, would you take a random's clothes for your kids, or do you think that's a bit like tainted or dirty or whatever?
I don't know. I generally have a thing when it comes to secondhand clothes, full stop. So it's not even just my kids. It's just even for me, I don't do seconds. And that's not a pretentious thing. It's just that, like, in my head,
You're part of the problem.
I am part of the problem. No, but you say I'm part of the problem, but I wear the same shit all the time. I hang on to my clothes.
Yeah.
I wear them to the death. So I might be part of the problem, but I'm also part of the solution of not giving away anything. So no, I don't know. That's a tough one. A random. I know that some of the clothes that we have for Aubrey came via friends that we know, but those clothes came via people that we didn't know.
Yep.
So maybe it's just.
So yes, I guess.
I guess I'd be okay with it because it was just one of those things that, like, oh well, it kind of came from the person we know, but I've kind of blocked out the bit that it came from someone else that I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I find in Australia, there's like, in the UK, I feel like no one gave a fuck who was wearing the clothes before. Like, I didn't really hear like people being conscious of, it being secondhand or whatever. Whereas here, I think there are more people who are like you and have a bit of hesitation, or just that's just not part of their buying, I guess, persona. Whereas like me personally, I'm like probably 60% maybe more of my wardrobe is thrifted, especially shoes.
Okay.
But that's because I just like finding and buying things that I wouldn't regularly find in like a shop or online.
Yeah.
And it strikes me as, I don't know if that's a shift or a trend, or if that's just the mindset of Australians.
So you think it's culturally here in Australia that?
I think, like, as far as I've experienced, yes, just based on the amount of like the people I've spoken to. And you can see that that Australians are now, actually they were second. I think now they're the worst textile waster and consumer globally per capita.
Second.
They were second and now they're first.
First.
Yeah. I sorry, don't quote me on that, but I read an article today. I can't recall if it was second or first, but they're like at least in top 3. Which was part of the reason why we decided to start Shopfront, because the core problem, the overarching problem statement was that there was way too much waste in Australia. And like, that's a mind-blowing fact for a lot of people, because you think it'd be like somewhere else, right? Not Australia.
Yeah, especially considering that what we got about 10%, less than 10% of the US population.
Oh, sorry, it's per capita. So like,
per capita?
Yeah,
oh, okay. Yeah, then I totally believe it then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll absolutely believe that.
We're just like over-consumers and hoarders, right? And obviously throw things away as part of that, because you can only hold so much. Like that was like the overarching theme of why we started Shopfront, because like we hypothesized that it was because it was like, what else do you do with your clothes? Like, it's like, you can give it to Salvos, or you can give it to Vinnie's or whatever, or you can sell it on Facebook Marketplace or something.
Yeah.
But if you got $7,000 worth of stuff, that's a lot of stuff a lot of the time, right? It takes time, and that's not your job.
So how do you guys go about testing that hypothesis?
We've just looked at stats. Like we're testing it now by seeing if people are actually going to adopt our product, to be honest. So that's going to be the big test. Like we're targeting professional sellers now, because that's we want to get more things in circulation. So by making professional sellers' lives easier, you kind of increase the capacity of people to turn from like a side hustle into a business, or even just start their side hustle, which converts some people who might not have been into it before to turn into a business, because I feel like a lot of people like that space, and it's commercially viable for us to test the market at the beginning. But what we want to do in the long term is actually convert the the casual people who are not doing this as a business and just trying to make their process easier to sell, because we know there are people who will buy that sort of stuff. Even resellers would buy stuff from people who aren't resellers to resell themselves, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Like you might have stuff in your cupboard that you wouldn't want to personally put in effort to sell on marketplaces, but someone else who's professional would take that off your hands in a heartbeat and sell it and take the clip of the sale.
Yeah, what I find interesting is that, so you have this product, and firstly, just give us a bit of an overview. What's the elevator pitch?
Yeah, so we're just trying to make it simple and easy to get things listed on marketplaces and get more chance of a sale, really. So trying to take the thinking out of getting products sold, or your clutter, or your fashion, or your furniture sold. Obviously focusing on fashion at the beginning, because that's going to be the focus for a long time because it's the biggest problem. But realistically, there are marketplaces like eBay that we're integrated with where you can sell anything as well. So we're not like specifically for fashion at the moment. But yeah, we've just got a tool that makes it super easy to sell, really, because getting onto eBay and getting onto Depop and getting onto these marketplaces, juggling them is a problem, and it takes a long time to get your product listed. So if we can use AI to actually take that listing process away from you, and all you got to do is upload the photos, done, which can save up to 90% of the time to do a listing.
So I wonder if you have created this, I guess it's almost like it's a tool that aggregates all the online selling platforms, right? Then ultimately, when this starts to get a bit of momentum and starts accelerating, why would there be a need to have various online platforms then?
There's so one reason that backed our hypothesis is the fact that the secondary marketplace is actually super fragmented. So you've got several marketplaces, and they keep popping up. Like you've got brands that are building their own marketplaces. You've got niche marketplaces specifically for things like trading cards or for specific subcultures of fashion, for example. And you can see like eBay started, I think it was Beanie Kids or something like that was their first product that they sold on, or like that was the first community that they were building for. Amazon was like books, for example. But over the years, they just become super diluted and just very generic. And what that does is enable space for sellers to want to find more niche and targeted marketplaces. So then you've got like Depop, for example, coming up and becoming this like Gen Z platform. But now they're starting to be diluted because of how big they're growing. And then you get places like Whatnot that I showed you coming in to fill that gap. And it's just this cycle where marketplaces get bigger and dilute, and it leaves space for smaller marketplaces and niche ones to come out, and they get bigger. And do you know what I mean? It's just this cycle. And now you've got the technology available for brands like IKEA to build their own peer-to-peer marketplace where you can go on and sell your IKEA stuff to another IKEA buyer. And if this becomes a big thing, then if you want to sell something, you're going to have like 20, 30 options to sell, which just makes it even more difficult, which then justifies something like Shopfront to bring it all in and make it simpler. Because then it's not like, should I sell it on Facebook or eBay? It's, should I sell it on Facebook, eBay, IKEA, this furniture market? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It just reminds me of the challenge that we have now with media consumption and subscriptions.
Exactly the same thing.
Exactly the same thing, isn't it? How they came through, and the whole point was to cut through and to offer something alternative, and then it just became too spread out. Then all these other players came in trying to capture their little pockets, whether they're offering exclusive HBOs or exclusive live content, Australian content, whatever else. And now it's just an expectation of us having to subscribe to 5, 6.
Yeah. Like AFL, you got to fucking pay for on KO half the time now as well, which is like...
It's not free to wear?
Not every game, no.
Was it? What was it?
Was it every game?
I don't know.
Oh, well, I assumed it was because we used to watch.
Every game? I think it was, but the Melbourne games were delayed by an hour.
Maybe something like that.
This is going back like 20 years ago.
But now you have to like...
You have to
pay to watch some games, right? Yeah, I just like... Everyone's commercializing everything, right? So it's kind of like... It's strange, but I do see the secondary market at least being super fragmented, and there's like brands have Shopify, right? Like brands have so many tools at their disposal to list products and get their business done. If you're a secondhand seller or you're making a business of selling unique items, like your partner, for example, where they're like one-offs, to create that one listing, like you need to, if you have 1,000 items, you need to create 1,000 listings. If you have 1,000 items as a brand, you probably have 20 products. You've got to create 20 listings. So you can see the disparity in like scaling your business is massive.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a challenge because her pieces are all unique. They're
I
all
saw that.
individual.
Yeah, I didn't realize until I just saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, so you have a company like, for example, Jack of the Dust. They make these pieces here, and they're all cast. So they're able to just create one cast and punch out a bunch of them, and they're all, I guess, like hand painted, but they're all able to still be the same listing because it's almost identical from one to the other.
And you assume that it has little differences, right?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose so, but it's not. It's what you're buying is not what's been photographed for the listing, but as good as anyway.
Whereas your wife's is a bit. They're all very.
They're all very different.
Yeah.
They're all very different. So that's a good point. That's that there are some businesses that do trade very unique wares, especially when you're talking about the secondhand market.
I've spoken to sellers who are making between 500K and $1 million in revenue selling unique products. Can you imagine how many listings that they're buying wholesale, like pallets and pallets of clothes? They need to create. They actually pay people to do these listings because they don't have time to do it themselves. That's the extent you have to go to. You have to pay a VA in the Philippines or something to create these listings on a spreadsheet and import them into who the fuck can do that?
It's a lot of work.
And these are people. These are real businesses. These aren't just like hobbies. This is like a pretty heavy revenue generating business for that market.
It's pretty crazy how that there's one thing, right? Like that comes out, say for example, eBay or any sort of secondhand marketplace. They come in to address a problem that the previous time or era of commerce created this gap or this challenge. So they came in and fulfilled that. Inadvertently created another problem.
Yeah.
In and of itself, then opens the space for someone like yourself to come in and just try to address this problem, and it almost feels like Band-Aid over a Band-Aid over a Band-Aid, where it's not really addressing the underlying problem, not addressing the underlying problem when we're trying to understand the level of consumerism and why it is that we culturally here in Australia to begin with consume so much and at such a rapid rate. And, with what you're trying to do is to avoid things going into landfill and to also help satiate our desire to acquire more. And rather than having to create more, it's just about circulating things.
Yeah, I mean, what we... yes, there's a commercial element. So you as a seller get to sell more, but that means that more products are obviously being circulated, which means that, more opportunity for someone who maybe isn't so interested in buying secondhand to actually find something that they like and then start their journey into maybe being more willing to buy secondhand. I also just think the more people that use it and the more that our brand can shout about this stuff, it's just, it educates people, even if they don't want to participate, to kind of maybe think twice about certain things.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because it comes down just to cultural values and why it is that we hold certain values. Like you asked me, it's like whether or not it'd be an issue if I bought secondhand clothes for my kids. And it wouldn't be any more of an issue than me buying secondhand clothes for myself, and which I don't. So there is, and I haven't really given it much thought. I just don't. But there has to be something behind it as to why I would rather acquire something new, which may be inferior in quality, than to buy something secondhand, which could outlive me.
And to be fair, when I talk secondhand and when I buy secondhand, it's generally been worn once, or it is actually new. It's just not been worn, right? So,
it could be a wrong size.
So a large portion of secondhand is actually new. It's just classified. Do you know what I mean? Secondhand is huge as a sector, and it doesn't always mean your battered T-shirts from the 80s. It can now mean a jacket that was purchased last week. And it's missed the return window or something, or was on sale that they couldn't take back. And that makes up that's actually a majority of what I buy. It's things that have been worn once, but I'm getting it for 40% off, 50% off, even probably 70, 80% off, just because people need to sell it.
And that was where the space of these factory outlets, that was what they were kind of providing, right?
But now factory outlets, I think, are pushing shit that is made for factory outlets as a cheaper and probably less sustainable version of the actual brand.
I would agree. I know that there are, for example, television.
Filler, for example, is...
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
And Champion, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, okay, so TVs, for example, I know that there are some TVs that are produced specifically for a Black Friday type
Oh,
sale.
really?
So these TVs, they're manufactured and they are available all year round. They're made, and I mean, look, you know exactly how much each component costs. So you've done the maths and you know the value of this particular TV. So for the majority of the year, it's going to be priced here. Come sale time, it's going to be dropped to where it actually should be. No one's buying it here, maybe a couple of idiots, but whatever. Where they're making the margins is when it goes down in price. So there's going to be a huge, still a massive saving, but you're effectively just paying what you should be paying for that type of TV.
Yeah, it's almost like Black Friday and Cyber Monday now. Like prices are inflated, and that's what you should,
Yeah.
which is just fucked. It's like
Yeah.
10 months of the year you're paying a premium almost.
And that culturally, that's just how it goes, right? So then we just become accustomed to not buying at those times.
Yeah.
And we save or hold off our buying habits until, you know, the sale period. And I think it's just there's so many layers to this, and this is kind of why, like, I thought it would be interesting having a conversation with you, because you're providing this new way of purchasing and a new way of selling, which is remedying the problem that we currently have. But when you peel back all the layers, just trying to understand why we have the habits that we have and what that says about us, firstly, individually, and then also the subcultures that we belong to and the greater culture that these subcultures fit in. And wanting to then, for you, it will just be a matter of then having to shift attitudes, right? So you know,
Behavior change is like basically what I say all the time. It's like why to change behaviors, at least for the long end of the tail, who people that aren't professional, right? It's making it super easy so that it's almost faster for them to download the app and sell rather than take it to a tip or something like that. So just kind of really closing that gap of simplicity. Because I actually read a stat from 2022, I think it was, in the UK, where almost half the population can't be bothered listing their products online, and that's why they throw it away. So that's a huge.
Jeez.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And you can tell, like, everyone complains about how many things you have to fill in on eBay. Like, how do I know how much to sell it for? How do I take the right pictures? You know, how do I describe it? What tags do I put? Tagging is a big one because people don't put tags, it doesn't get discovered. So we do all of that in a heartbeat. So that the idea is in a couple seconds, you'd have all that generated for you. And if you're not a professional seller, you're not going to care if it doesn't sound like your tone of voice or whatever, right? You're just going to be like,
Whatever,
got all the critical information, done.
So having a background in finance,
Yep.
you go across to the UK and you took your fashion brand with you. Moving into Shopfront, was that more coming from your fashion background or from your finance background? Or even a combination of the two?
Yeah, I actually thought about this the other day, to be honest. When I moved to the UK, I was sick of working in financial services, in banking, kind of like did what I needed to do and had to get out. And so that triggered the move to London. I really wanted to work in a startup. Fintech was where I wanted to go, only because I kind of had a finance background. And I like the idea of being in a startup, not knowing how stressful that was going to be. But I actually joined an impact startup, which is now a B Corp business, which is like, if you don't know what B Corp is, it's like a standard of ethical and sustainable trading that you need. So it's an impact business essentially. And I was the first hire there. Took a bit of a risk because I was getting paid peanuts to launch this growth strategy for something that I wasn't really sure if it was going to work, but I trusted the two founders. And I scaled that to £2 or £3 million in annual revenue a year. Grew a team of like 20 under us, 20 in the business. Raised over £40 million in debt and equity. So I kind of knew how to start a business from being so close to two first-time founders. And alongside that, I obviously had my fashion brand as well. So I was dabbling in a couple things. But when I came back to Australia and joined Antler, it was like, okay, I need to do something with impact. And I want it to be in an area that I'm passionate about. And sustainability and circular economy ticked all the boxes because I knew I had my finger on the pulse for the last 10 years. I knew what the marketplaces were. I knew how they operated. I knew their shortfalls. I also knew how selling should be as an e-com business, and I knew how easy it was to use Shopify. So I saw that disparity there, as I touched on before. Plus, I knew how to launch a B2C business. Not perfectly, obviously. They're like, I'm not an expert in it by any means, but I'd kind of gone through that startup technology fundraising journey, which I think is somewhat of a unique skill to have because not many people can crack that first launch period. So that's kind of how Shopfront was established. It was like an amalgamation of all my kind of backgrounds and interests.
What did you say the skills? What are the skills?
I think it takes a certain type of person to go through the fundraising journey. Like it's not fucking easy by any means. It was probably the most difficult thing I've ever gone through. Just the amount of, like, not everyone sees like, yeah, you raised $800,000 and they see like the Smart Company article and it's like, yeah, that sounds cool. Like, you must have so much money. That must have been like such a great, but they don't see the thousands of no's that you get from investors and the people that are telling you like, it's never going to work. You don't know what you're doing with this market. Your go-to-market strategy isn't right. You're way too early for us. I don't see how this is going to, there's a lot of that shit that you get from very sophisticated people. So if you're hearing that like, 20, 30 times a week, your ego gets punched and you end up building this like concrete sort of persona. So yeah, I think it takes like a lot of thick skin and you're doing it full time too. So like you're doing it at the risk of losing everything, all of your income as well, right? Like it's not like I was working at the time, working for someone else at the time. Like I was all in on this when we were fundraising.
I think because the conversation here is working for a startup, there's a lot of, it's a lot of risk involved. And I think there will be a lot of parallels between startup culture and these independent creatives, a lot of the people that I speak to. But yet it's seen quite divorced, the two worlds, where startup is almost like, it's treated like an ecosystem in and of itself. And all these independent creatives are, by that virtue, all independent and are just taking that punt. And I find it interesting how that there is almost, it's like a very loose roadmap for startups, right? Like there's very broad steps that you need to take to eventually get your funding.
Or there's also like no actual source of truth. Like you can have investors, you could have other founders, you could have everyone telling you how to do it. None of it's going to work for you. Like at the end of the day, you're at the helm and you're the one building the relationships. You're the one pushing your agenda, pushing your passion, pushing like your conviction in the business. Like no one, like whatever the fucking book you read or article you read or kind of workshop you go to, it might get you started and help you get some inspiration. But at the end of the day, it's going to take fucking a lot of trial and error. It's going to take a lot of no's, a lot of just people chewing your ear off, telling you what to do. And you just got to like say like, no, this is, you just have to have full conviction and keep a straight face, which is the hardest part.
There are going to be most certainly more people saying no and trying to shut down what you're doing.
Yeah.
And this is what I find really interesting about startups is that by the nature of it, it should be something that leans more towards taking risk.
That's the thing. Like these, like investors have raised money to take risks on startups. Yet for some reason, what I found in Australia was that you need revenue, you need all these metrics hit before most people, even when they say they invest early, would even give you a second of their time, right? And I think that was a very difficult learning period.
And that is something that is culturally here with startups. Maybe less so in other areas, because what I found is
there's a lot of reservation, like conservatism here, I think.
Yeah, and then that's why a lot of them just fuck off and build outside of Australia.
Yeah, and then everyone's like, why are you not, they talk about tall poppy syndrome and stuff. It's like, well, no one gave us a chance here, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, like, I say that loosely. There were some really good investors as well. Like, I'm not saying every investor is bad. I mean, we got investments. So like there were quite a few people that believed in us, which was fantastic. But still, I spoke to not thousands, like over 1,000 people, and copped a lot of no's. I mean, some of those no's were very constructive as well. Some of them were just blatant lies or just silly. The worst was when I was invited to pitch for an hour to a VC, which you don't normally have to present your deck to a VC. Like you send them your deck, they read your deck, and then they come through and you chat about your business for like 40 minutes or whatever it is. They asked me to present
For an hour.
for an hour. It actually went for an hour and a half or something. I followed up like multiple times over the next 2 weeks, and then they were like, sorry, we're not actually investing money at the moment.
Fuck.
And I was like, are you fucking serious? Like 2 weeks for that response when you've invited me in and wasted my time.
Yeah.
There's been times where I've dealt with like gatekeepers before, where like you'd approach someone who's an associate or like maybe just the vetter, and they've been like, no chance that you're going to get investment from this investor. And then lo and behold, we ended up getting through to that investor directly, and they were quite interested. So it's just a lot of like finicky things.
A lot of bullshit.
Yeah, but it's because the sheer volume that they see as well.
Yeah.
Like you can imagine how many people are trying to get funding, thousands a year. So they're going through so many pitch decks constantly and talking to founders constantly. So like unless you're an absolute standout, you're unlikely to get to that next phase in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And for me, what worked was building the relationship. So a lot of it was to do with me as a founder and my conviction and how outward I was with the business, which I think helped crystallize the vision a little bit more. So yeah.
I mean, they were essentially investing in you,
Yeah.
not so much the business.
One of our VCs that invested in us, the second interview was actually me and my co-founder on a call where it was like more of a psychometric interview. Like it was like, what's the worst thing you've ever been through? Or like, how would you handle...
They gave you a trolley problem?
Yeah.
So you're going to pull a lever?
Literally nothing to do with the business. Purely like no prep was...
Yeah.
There was no way to prep for it. And that was probably the hardest interview. But we ended up successfully going through that. So that was interesting. And I quite like that approach because it takes the weight off the nitty gritty stupid stuff like your financials and whatever, which means nothing until you launch and you know what you're doing. Like it really is the founder that drives everything.
And for the most part, they're not going to be very cluey in the industry that you're going in as well.
No.
So why would they even care to see what the numbers look like?
Exactly.
And when you're at that stage of pitching, at that very early stage, you're fucking making up these numbers, man.
Dude, our numbers like they're not bullshit. There's some logic behind it, but we're never going to get to fucking $40 million in the first 2 years. It could happen, like if everything works out absolutely perfectly, but you know, fat chances. We had one angel investor wanted to look through our numbers and everything like that. It took like an hour of our time and just didn't end up investing because of that. And I was just like, dude,
Because of the inflated
I forgot
numbers?
what it was. It was just like something to do with you just had reservations on the actual financial model, and I'm just like,
Yeah, but
this is projections. Like
Yeah.
this is the
They
most
they should have known.
baseless financial document.
This is what I mean when you talk about the world of startup. There are certain steps and procedures, and it's almost like a courtship.
Yeah,
Right, like-
it's very like not scientific, but it's very just there are steps. You can't just open the door and get money, which is
No,
what
of course
people
not.
think. Like,
But the way to acquire the money is it's a rudimentary process that doesn't necessarily separate the good from the bad either. It's just the process. I mean, look, I've only just observed it from an outsider's point of view and have had a toe dipped in there working from a branding point of view. But from what I've seen, it was a lot of things like, why would you do it that way? Like, why is this particular step there when it's not actually achieving the thing that it's supposed to do? Like, to your point about how, you know, you would just spend this amount of time trying to pitch to an investor for them just to not even give you anything back. So why would you even have that particular step designed in that fashion?
it's mostly deal flow. So as an investor, you want to get as many startup. So no one will tell you we're not investing. They will always tell you it's not right for us now, because
Yep.
they want to keep you in a pipeline for when you're like. I guess it's somewhat like a sales cycle where this is not all investors, but a lot of investors I think are looking to build a long pipeline of startups. So it's kind of keeping everyone on their toes for as long as possible before it's actually a no, like an actual no. And so they will take the meetings, take the calls, get you to pitch, even if there was no chance that they were going to invest in you in the first place.
Right.
And you as a startup founder have to weed out which one of those are serious and which ones aren't, while everyone's saying that they are somewhat serious, or putting on the face that they might invest, which is why you would have thousands of conversations, because no one's outwardly telling you no. Do you know what I mean? Or like not many people are outwardly telling you no, which is that's what I mean. It's psychologically a difficult game to play. And it becomes like, when you're in it, it's almost not about the money half the time. Like it becomes more than that. It becomes like this thing. Do you know what I mean? It's just it is. It's a
song and dance. There is courtship around that. There's like,
yeah.
It's almost like that these set procedures, and you just have to follow it all to get to the end result that you're after. And so, would you guys have raised, and you independently and with help, have you got yourself your meal? How long is that meant to keep you afloat for?
Between 20 and 24 months. So
okay,
it's a good amount.
Couple of years.
Yeah. And that's accounting for our new staff members, which is fantastic. Accounting for, obviously, assuming we don't get revenue, which is very unlikely.
Right.
So
that's nice.
Yeah, that's just like so we can execute on our big strategy. But the reality is we're probably going to have to start fundraising again in another 6 months, because you need to prime up new investors. You need to it's funny, once you're in this startup VC game, it's not like you raise money and happy days. It's like you're locked into this future cycle of pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, exit. Like that's like this dream, right?
Talk us about that, right? All the different series is for just different scaling, sizing of the business.
Yeah, I mean, they're all pretty loose, to be honest. It's like basically like pre-seed, or generally it would start with like a family or friends or angel round to just get your business registered, get the MVP up, whatever. Pre-seed is generally when you can demonstrate some traction, or you might have got traction and now you're like testing the market. Seed would be, well, my interpretation of seed is kind of when you're close to product market fit and you really got that engine going, and you just know that you need money to execute to unlock the next stage. A, B, C, D after that is really just the business.
It's whatever
depending on
you're
what
at.
the business is. Yeah, it could be like scaling to a new market, new product for the business. Things that really turn you from like 1 or 5 mil in revenue to like 50 mil in revenue. That sort of level.
It's one of the big conversations and the biggest sticking point when it comes to all this, other than the actual tangibles that you're creating, but it's the intangible of the equity, right? Like that is king, right? That's the thing that you have to be very careful.
It's the valuation of the business, right?
Yeah.
It's like how you especially pre-revenue, and in Australia where the market's not great, and like where like a lot of it's on perception too. So as a first-time founder, you're trying to get investors, but you're also trying to get investors that aren't going to push your valuation down so they get the most equity. So you might even get investors, but they might be shit investors. Luckily, we have really, really good investors who were very founder-friendly and gave us a solid valuation cap, because we didn't do a price round. A very fair valuation cap, so we retained a relatively good portion of our shares still, based on that. But heard horror stories on that too, where you might get your valuation pushed quite low, where you're having to give up too much equity. But the alternative to that is that you don't get investment and your business is dead, right? So you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. It's just it's tricky to navigate, and these are all things like, if you've never done this before. Like you hear the words safe note, equity, fucking pre-seed, seed, like they're all just words, and you're just like, what the hell is going on? And that's kind of what you're dealing with while you're fundraising. Because you're not going to master all that until you get the real life application of your business. Because again, it's completely case by case and unique to your kind of market, your business, your stage.
It takes
your
its own form, and it's got all the complexities about that. But that's what I kind of mean about with startups, that it's got its own parameters, and you could just be running or starting a business, much like anyone else starting up a small business, and it won't fall within this category because there are just certain parameters that it doesn't quite fit into. But once you're in there, it's this whole new world of trying to do business, and it's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, I think there's a misconception that a startup, I mean, there's technology startups and there's there's VC startups and there's non-VCs. Like they're both very different, right? Like I think that the way you approach business is very different as a VC funded business, because you have to think, you're not thinking like, oh, 500K in revenue is great. Like that's shit. You need to think about like $1 billion of revenue. That's your end goal. It's not, which is mad, because 500K revenue, you'd be jumping for joy a lot of the time if you were getting that as a business. So, it's weird. And then like starting a consultancy or a real estate agent, that sort of thing, it doesn't face the same challenges as as this sort of startup, if you know what I mean, because there's different like metrics of success and versions of success, and a lot of it is just based on nothing. It's a lot of it is just based on the what's the word, like just the system and the way it is. Do you know what I mean? There's no basis behind it. It's you're held to account in this way.
Yeah, like they have a strike rate of what, like to say 1 in 10, right? They want 1 in 10 to succeed.
Yeah.
So they account for that one being the golden goose.
Yep.
And willing to take a punt on 10 with acknowledging that potentially 9 can fail.
Yep. More, I've actually
of course
you could have 1 in 30. That one, if that one has $1 billion exit, it'd more than pay for your other 29 fuck ups.
Yeah, sure. Well, whatever the metric is, but then the expectation of all the 30 in that case have to hit here, knowing that 29 are just going to bottom out.
Yeah.
So whatever it is that you do, no matter how big you think you're going to be, you're going to have to aim higher. That's just the nature of the beast.
So this is an interesting thing when you're fundraising as well. Like traditionally, when you think of competition, you think of like competitors in your space. When you're fundraising, your competitors are not only the people in your space, they're every other startup fighting for funding. Because if you're an investor, you've got Shopfront and another business at the same stage, but that business has got revenue and maybe a little bit more potential. They've taken your investment. They've taken that opportunity away from you, because it's not unlimited opportunities either.
That's right.
So like you all of a sudden have this cascading effect of people that you're competing with and that you're trying to like rise above, that are completely different businesses to you.
Yeah.
But are fighting for the same capital.
Yeah, in that space that you're playing in.
Yeah.
So what would you say would be the qualities of both the business and you and your other founders that would get you across the line? Because I think this is important, not just for startups, but it'll play into, and it'll like be a transferable thing across other areas and for other people that are starting up businesses in other areas as well.
So what you need as a startup, like for us, we just need to have like huge, amazing goals. Like a huge market is incredibly important. So you need to have like, multi-million or billion-dollar market, which means, if your business were to explode and you're as perfect as possible, that you would be able to tap into like billions of people eventually. So that's kind of one metric. The other is,
so it's more of a potential market when you're scaling, not the initial market.
No, and that's a misconception too. Like a lot of people think that you need to go to market with this product that's going to serve billions of people. That's bullshit, because you're never going to get that in your first product. It's like, what are the steps and what are the versions of the product that it can evolve into this business that can tap into billions of people. And that's what we believe Shopfront is, like at its full potential, when we've exhausted every vertical, every business type, every opportunity in this problem space, it can definitely tap into billions of people, right? So that was kind of our thesis behind Shopfront. You have business models, and to be able to obviously make money, and a scalable way to make money. So SaaS generally, like software as a service, is generally an investable product, because you can do subscription models and that sort of thing, or take a clip of a sale, or outcome based, whatever you decide to do. I think those are the two things that I think from a business point of view, people would invest in it from a VC point of view. And also, like, does it have like a potential exit strategy, or kind of like, is it in a good problem space and things like that? Like there are other nuances too. Yeah.
I think generally speaking, people don't have big enough or lofty enough goals.
I mean, not everyone needs VC funding either, right?
No, you don't. But I think even just from a personal success point of view, I think a lot of people undersell themselves.
Yep.
And if you were to aim low, it's easy enough to achieve that. And if you were to fall short of that mark, then you've fucking fallen pretty well short of it. But if you're going to aim high and fallen short of that mark, it's still not too bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that, like, generally speaking, there is, and it could be a cultural thing. And this is a conversation that I've had on this podcast before about tall poppy syndrome, right? And what does tall poppy syndrome lead to? It perpetuates this mindset of inadequacy.
Yeah, I think Australia generally has a comfort culture in a lot of aspects of life. Like, I personally think if I didn't go to the UK for 4 years, I wouldn't have had the balls to do this.
That could be absolutely right. Like, you were exposed to a completely
where
different
it was
environment.
almost normal for people to dream that big and actually achieve it. And there's so many examples of it being done. Like, it almost feels like possible. Where here, it's like,
Nah. Don't
here,
do
if I
that.
told someone,
Yeah.
like, I don't even tell my friends that often that, like, the reason I'm in this is to build $1 billion business, because they'll get laughed at a lot of the time. They'll be like, come on, man.
Fuck off.
Like, how fuck are you going to make $1 billion business? Do you know what I mean? Like, but that's the reaction a lot of the time. Whereas in London, it's like, of course. Seen many examples of it being done.
It's a pretty standard number.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
it's not like an unachievable.
No.
But yeah, that's just So
But also the scaling of the value of things hasn't quite shifted that much here as well. And, like, what I mean is that, let's say MySpace. I think MySpace sold for, like, what, $500 million? At the time, it was like, Jesus Christ, $500 million. And then shortly after, I think, what was it, when Instagram sold to Zuck? That was still quite a while ago. That was for, like, what, just a handful of billion?
yeah.
Like nothing, right? It was probably like 1 point something or $4 billion.
That wasn't like surprising to anybody. It was like, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like, back then it was like, oh, geez, that's pretty, like, because I think Instagram at the time, I think, there was like a team of 12?
Yeah.
And I was like, Jesus Christ, that's massive. But these days, man, nothing's going for less than, you know, heaps of billions.
Yeah, you've got AI companies now within 6 months generating like a few hundred million revenue. It's absolutely wild how fast you can build a business now, and a big business.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, I mean, like, I think, yeah, like, I think you're kind of sealing. If you want to do the dance with VC, you've got to be prepared to
There needs to
like
be some sort of audacity.
Yeah, like, you couldn't go in, like, to my point earlier, you're never going to raise VC capital for an e-com brand, for example, or it's unlikely for an e-com brand, for example, because that's difficult to scale. You've got, like, physical stock. There's blockers there. Like, consultancies, you need manpower, so that's difficult to scale. So that's not a VC backable business. So, like, yeah, but
Some kind of digital platform, then it'll have to be.
More often than not.
Could that just be a matter of then there needs to be some sort of consideration for how a business can scale, right? Because there are a lot that aren't scalable, right? And I think that's one of the challenges that, let's say, I speak with a lot of creatives, and it's not something that they necessarily want to scale either. Like, if they're creating wares and goods that require dedication of time and energy and a lot of focused attention just on creating one piece, that's just what it is. That's where the value is. The value isn't in how do I create one thing and multiply that without me having to do any more work.
Well, yeah, and a creative generally creates, and they're satisfied with creating something amazing and having people purchase that something amazing. Like, it's not about, like, can I build the biggest thing and have the biggest impact to the most people in the world? Like, that's not generally the metric of success of a creative.
And that's what it comes to, the metric of success.
Yeah, but that's what a VC backed founder needs to have. Like, you need to really think big and take criticism on the chin and just stick with your gut and conviction.
Why did any of them why did they think that you weren't able to scale what you got?
A lot of it was because a lot of the no's we got were mainly because of the misconception in the secondhand market and whether people would actually adopt a product to sell on. Like, were there enough people that would use your product?
Well, that is yet to be known, really, isn't it?
Yeah, but like I know that there are billions who would use it because there are billions that use eBay and Depop and whatnot, right? There's a billion. There's so many people that sell. So we're just making it like all things going perfectly. We're just making it easier for them to do that. So I was confident, and I think, you know, a funny conversation which one of our investors had was they were the first one, or one of the later ones to be like, I don't know if this market's big enough. And at that point, I was almost fed up, and I think I almost cracked it on the call, and not cracked it, but was very stern and said, like, this market is big. I've done the numbers. I know this market is big, and I kind of put them on the back foot a little bit, which was, and it turned out to be a really positive outcome for that. And that's where I kind of just clicked, and I was like, me sticking to my guns holds more value than someone's perception of your conviction or your understanding of the market, if you know what I mean. Like people take your understanding and your conviction in what you're building at our stage anyway, more than like what they perceive that market to be and look like.
Well, again, because they're investing in you, right? And they're trusting you to be the experts.
But it's really hard to believe that as a founder, because there's biases. There's a lot of like if you went to someone and be like no matter what the business is, like, we'll invest in you, like, that's a pretty strange.
As a first-time founder.
It's a tough thing to grapple with, but it's so true. And it's like, it's just mad, especially if you're pre-revenue and pre-product, because they need to know that you will do anything and fight tooth and nail for this to be successful.
So how did you prove that?
I just didn't take no for an answer. Like that was just my ethos for months. Like I just backed myself through and through. It did not give up. When someone would tell me no, I'd go to their manager and just reach out to their manager on LinkedIn. Probably was a pain in the ass to a lot of people, but you know, that like relentlessness is like key. If you don't have relentlessness, I don't think you're going to make it as a startup founder.
No.
Like it's just, yeah.
It's not even just in that initial phase, right?
No, like, I mean, I still have to be relentless now, right?
Exactly. I think you got to be even more so, because once you have the money, you're still not at the point where you're popping champagne yet.
Dude, when you have the money, you celebrate for like a day. You might go out for dinner with your partner, but you're thinking on that dinner like, oh fuck, now I've got 2 years to make this $1 billion business. Like, what am I going to do? No, it's like you have your plan, obviously, but that it's a plan. It's not like a guaranteed outcome, right? Like you still, I didn't know who I was going to hire. I didn't know the personas of the people I was going to hire. I didn't know if our first go-to-market strategy was going to work. There were so many like question marks. Like now I've got a really fantastic team that I'm incredibly proud of, that we took the time to build, who I know are excellent and like experts in their fields. But before that, you know, we're trusted with that money to hire the right people, which is another difficult step. So it's almost like, it's great you raise money, but like now you're in this journey.
The pressure's on.
And you got to raise again, like, you know, not so long down the track.
Yeah, well, if you've got a 2-year runway, then it doesn't it gives you maybe 12 months before you can start.
That's a good runway compared to a lot of other raises, but it's still, you need to hit pretty demonstrable milestones before. Like I've likely got to go to the UK or US, like in person, to meet people this year to like prep for that next round. Like there's a lot involved. Like while you're trying to run a business still, you're doing all this to prep for the next round, which is 12, 18 months away.
It's such an interesting place to be, man. And I think that's...
I mean, I find it like exciting, and otherwise I wouldn't be doing it, but that's not for everybody.
No. Running a business in and of itself, there are so many challenges. Even just the day-to-day, the admin, it's constantly something happening. The money part of things it's something that really stifles the other part of running the business. And for you, it is more than just constant, because now you've got people working with you.
Yeah.
You have to put food. You
see the salaries every fortnight. It's like it's like what, almost triple.
And how many in your team?
4 full-time salaries, including me and my co-founder, and two full-timers.
Yeah, it goes quick.
Yeah, it's like it's got money down the drain, like every fortnight. Not down the drain, like it's worth it, but you know,
you see it go down,
you see
and
that
you're not going.
It's like a sand glass thing, just like dropping. Like my job
is definitely a metaphorical. Yeah.
My job as CEO is literally just to do anything I can so the business doesn't run out of money. That's like my JD right now. It's like money coming in and making sure that there's not too much money going out is like basically what I balance every single day. Like everything I do has to satisfy one of those needs.
I wonder for what you guys are doing and to tie it back into what we were talking about earlier about it being a cultural shift that's required. How much educating can you do in tandem with ramping up this business? Because it feels as though that a large portion of the success of what you're doing specifically is going to be hinged on the mindset shift and buying patterns changing and just the way that we consume wares, in particular clothes. It feels as though that it's something that needs to be done in tandem. And I guess that's one of the benefits that you guys have as well. It's not just a matter of like just shoot for the stars and hope that it works out. You also have control with how things on the other end are operating through educating and shifting the culture. Like what have you observed that's happening on that end, or how are you guys even contributing to that end of things?
Yeah, we do a lot of work with like eBay, for example. So we kind of know where their focus is, which has we know where our peers are focusing, and we can see where the challenges are and kind of what we need to do. I think what we're really trying to do is build a brand that people can relate to. I think it comes back to brand. Like we don't want to be a software company that's offering this tool. We want to be a relatable brand where people understand what the vision is, what the mission is, can get on board with, and eventually use the product or our free version of the product to help alleviate some of their stresses when selling. Like I think once we get the product out and people are interacting with it, then we have an opportunity because they're on our mailing list to like feed them more information, get them up to date with what's happening. Like we've even got a waitlist flow now where we're telling people what the resale trends are, how to actually set yourself up for success when you're selling a product. Like, you know, on a small scale, we're trying to do our bit to feed through a bit of information, but it's only going to come when people start using the product that they'll actually see that they can actually make money from doing this, and that it's actually not so difficult that that they have to throw things away like that. They need to interact with the product in order to have their behavior changed.
Well, let's just say that if your product didn't exist, if Shopfront didn't exist, what is the undercurrent that's happening culturally and in society that's supporting the growth or the realization of what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it comes back to that marketplace growth opportunity. There's marketplaces popping up. There's new opportunities for people to sell. Brands are now getting involved. Renting is a big thing, for example. Like there are a lot of different aspects of the economy that
You mean renting?
Like renting platforms where like you can actually have it's mostly for women's wear. You could like offer your dress for rent.
Right.
So there's this thing, there's a company called The Vault in Perth, which is a big, I think, one of the world's biggest. Don't quote me on that, but they're from Perth. They're pretty big. And basically, if you buy like a Zimmerman dress or an expensive dress for $2,000, you can basically assume that you could claw back maybe $600 of that by renting it out on the nights you're not wearing it. Therefore, you've only purchased the item, well, girl math, you've only purchased the item for $1,400, right? And that's this kind of this shift that's happening in that world, which I find really
So they could almost be investments, and they could just buy these garments as investments.
There's professional renters on the platform that are making like $100,000 a year renting their goods. Like they're not even giving it away; they're still the owners, but they're just leasing out their expensive dresses. Yeah,
that makes so much sense.
Maybe don't tell your partner that because she might start buying.
Now that you mention it, I feel as though that there was a conversation about a handbag. I don't know.
Same thing, like yeah. But I couldn't picture guys doing that. Like it's not a thing a guy would do. Like. I don't know if I would wear rented. What occasion would I?
A tux.
Maybe a tux. Yeah, suits and that stuff. But that's tailored, right?
But we're under different kind of social pressures. We can get one tux, and as long as our body doesn't change much.
Exactly.
That's the only tux.
It actually comes down to the sizing, I think, because women have like a set of sizing that majority of women fit into. So you can kind of, whereas men, it's too many variables, right? It's very different.
Yeah.
But anyway, like I see that sort of shift in the market that's happening, which is exciting. eBay's doing a lot of work, for example. Salvos actually do a lot of work in ecom, and they're beefing up their kind of ecom strategy a bit. We talk to Salvos quite a bit, which is exciting. So I feel like all the big players in the market, not just in Australia but globally, are pushing for this shift. And our competitors, like, we're not the first to do this, by the way. Shopfront's, I mean, I feel like we're going to be the best, but we're not the first to do this. We actually know that there's a lot of competition in the US, for example, which is why there's more of that shift already happening in the US, because people are using tools like ours and are aware of tools like ours. But that just hasn't come to Australia or even much of APAC yet, which is where we saw a massive opportunity.
Yeah, that is interesting, and I do agree. I think that there's been a bit of an undercurrent, at least with dialogue. The dialogue has changed with how we consume.
Yep.
And I know I've just become a little bit more privy and a little bit more aware of, if just buying clothes that just don't fucking last, man. I firstly think that there are that the base level of what is acceptable as wares that you can sell should be elevated. Like if you're able to sell a t-shirt for $5, I want to know where in the product life, from it just being developed, manufactured, shipped, where is that profit, or where are the margins getting cut, or like who's losing out? And obviously it's going to come to the people working on the factory floor. We know this, right? So there's already going to be some injustices happening with how it's some poor practices rather with how it's being developed and how they're being created. So there is a responsibility on us, the end consumer, to ensure that that doesn't exist. And if you were to eradicate that and to have things built higher quality, then we already know that there's going to be some longevity.
On the flip side, though, then you've got like people who can't afford. Like, there's people who buy the $5 t-shirt because that's all they can afford, and they really don't give a shit about where it came from, right? And
no, but it just doesn't hold up. Like, as in what I mean, but like physically, it just.
Yeah, I know. But so, I also think, thinking as that person, they don't really care if it's got a couple holes in it either, right? So it's like, if that's all you can get.
That's all you can get? Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
So I think there's like that. I don't know how you would solve the problem, whether it's inflating some other products so that you can not have that unsustainable manufacture of the cheaper products, or kind of, a mixed production avenue, if you know what I mean.
Oh, this is going to be a very complicated conversation.
Yeah, there's But anyway,
there's a whole macroeconomics.
Yeah, I don't think there's a easy solution for it, but just because of the level of variance in the consumers, right? Like, a lot of people don't give a shit about where it came from.
I don't think it's so much a matter of giving a shit about where it came from. I think it's a matter of just, what I say is that there should just be a minimum standard. So it's not so much a matter of where it came from, but where it came from is obviously going to play into, there's degrees of exploitation there. So it's not a matter of us caring whether or not that's being exploited, but you as a consumer of buying a cheap product, that's also exploitation on that end as well, right? Like, whoever is pocketing, you're not profiting from that. Someone's profiting from all different layers of exploitation from every touch point. There is,
because I guess you're getting crap, and they're
so there's some skimming. There's skimming happening everywhere, and there's just almost like a disrespect to our expectations of how we should be, what we should deem as acceptable.
Yeah,
and it is very much a first world problem. I get that. But it all has some kind of knock-on effect. Like, if we are able to treat the way our standard of living just and just elevate that, even when I say elevate, I mean just like lift the standard just that little bit more, then what would the knock-on effects would be for that? It would be where there's going to be greater protection of the environment, less in landfill, and it will help with the circular nature of how fashion, I don't want to say should be, but could be. I think that the circulation of fashion is just going to come down to our desire to want to acquire new things.
That's a behavior thing, yes, not to do with the product as much.
Sorry.
That's more behavioral than to do with the
That's
product.
behavioral, right? But the whole behavioral thing is also going to come down to why it is that we act that way culturally. Where there are some people that, there will be certain subcultures and nationwide cultures that don't really consume to this level, whether it be in pockets of Europe or Asia. And I'm not talking about places where they're doing it harder. But when the places that have the luxury to have more options.
Yeah, it's I mean, this is like I don't think I would ever try and solve this particular problem like that. I just don't have enough like expertise to like dive into that supply chain and quality piece. I just think there's so many variables. Like I've spoken to someone before where I was like, I would love to make a sustainable brand to give people an up. And she was like, what's a sustainable brand? Like, what's your definition? And I was like, like high quality. And she's like, yeah, but there's tons of like she was putting me on my back foot. Like, it was a really honest and great conversation, but it was like, why are you starting another brand? Like, it made me think like people starting brands are part of the problem as well.
That's
like,
true.
The thousands of people that I mentioned before who are doing hoodies, trackies, and t-shirts, they don't have a high sell-through rate because they don't know how to make a brand. I'm sure you've seen a ton of Instagram brands do their one launch, and then that's it. What happens to all that stock? I'm a victim of this. I've got a few hats and shirts in my cupboard because I thought it was a great idea to start a high quality brand, thinking people want high quality stuff, and then all of a sudden you can't run that brand anymore. Now you're stuck with stock. And like I'm a small scale. You can imagine a big brand when they go out of business or they make a bad decision or they just have
the barriers to entry are relatively low, but the commitment is still pretty high.
Yeah, which means you could put out $1,000 to buy 50 products, maybe sell 10 of them, and then 40 products are just sent to landfill. And this happens all the time. Like, you see brands try and kick off and establish themselves and never get past the first launch.
Yeah.
Sampling, like all the samples you go through.
That's true, actually.
Like, there's a ton of problems with that. And that's why I was a bit reluctant to, like, now, if I start a brand, it has to be super well thought through and it needs to be treated like a real business. Which is why, I wouldn't like just whip up another round of clothes because I feel like it, because I know that has a could have a detrimental impact to the environment because I'm feeding into that consumerism.
Fuck, I actually didn't consider that one.
It's an interesting one. I was only put on my back feet about that like 3 weeks ago, and I found it a very interesting conversation that in my 7 years of building a couple brands, I'd never even thought about. Which is a wild topic, right?
Yeah, because it's not just you. There's thousands of other people just like you.
Yeah. You're almost a consumer of the manufacturers in China.
That's exactly what you are.
Exactly.
Shit. So by lowering the barriers, they've invited a whole bunch of people to try something new. But the success rate from that is, look, man, playing the game of odds.
I think fashion is equally as difficult as the venture game, to be honest. Like starting a fashion brand, like that has its own challenges as well that you don't get as another brand, as another type of business too, right?
And you're playing with a lot of moving pieces that are largely out of your control. And as you highlighted, you're working on something that you have to project for a year, 2 years ahead.
Yep.
And you're working on something for that time now. So it means that whatever it is that's actively happening now, if you're jumping on that ship right now, you're already too late.
Yeah, I've spoke about this on another podcast. I think people just assume it's way too easy to start a brand, and that's a problem. But I just thought that was a problem because it creates this kind of, I think it just floods the market with the same stuff, first of all, like from a buyer point of view and from a brand who's actually like trying to break through. You're just competing with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I had never thought about it. Well, the physical stuff as well. And this doesn't actually go for just brands. Like this is like, what if you started a furniture company or you started anything that's got a physical product? Like if the barrier is so low, think of the thousands and millions of people who have started businesses and just thrown away or had to get rid of their stock that they couldn't sell.
Man, have you heard, do you know what the Dunning-Kruger effect is?
No.
So it's when you're new to something or you just learn of something, your confidence level is really high. And you move on a little bit, you learn a little bit more, and then it just dips, right? Because you've just opened to this whole new world, like, oh my God, there's so much I just don't know.
Yeah.
And then you get to a point where it dips, and then you got to decide for yourself, do I bail or do I continue? And if you choose to continue, then you're going to be on a slow incline. If you have the determination and the tenacity to ride out that dip and to learn from that failure, that initial failure. And because the initial barrier is so low when it comes to starting a clothing brand, it's like, oh, I'll have a go. And then you get out there and you're like, oh my God, what the fuck am I doing? And then poof, you realize you don't know shit. And there's so many people just like you.
And what's the byproduct of that, right? Like what's the flow-on effect of that? Not many people think about that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That hasn't really been considered. I've had someone reach out to me and I asked, like, how much do you charge for such and such and such to start up? I've got a friend that wants to start a clothing brand. I'm like, oh, Jesus. Straight away, I'm like, I'm like, okay, what are they thinking? What's their approach to this? It's like, oh, they just want to just do a short run of 50 t-shirts and just come up with a logo and put a logo on. I love. And then I was like, guaranteed.
That's what I mean, man.
Guaranteed fail.
There's actually a lot of kids are doing it as well. Like kids aren't going to give a shit about the waste that they're accumulating. They'll buy 100 products, not give a fuck if none of them sell. They'll throw it in the tip. There's no consideration, and that's
sell on Shopfront.
Yeah, well, but because it's not a brand that people resonate with, it's even harder to circulate because it's like, it's probably shit, first of all.
Yeah.
It's probably the reason it didn't make it at all is because maybe the quality's bad or the logo's bad or people just don't like it. So why would it be good for circular? It's not good for circularity at all. If anything, it's probably one of the worst contributors to that problem. Yeah.
AS Color should have a vetting process.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Put it back on them.
It's just, I mean, like that's what I mean. Like the space that we're playing in it's like Pandora's box, man. Once you get in and you start thinking about it, there's problems that just pop up left, right, and center.
You're absolutely right, man. So the best you can do right now is to try to remedy the problem that we currently have.
Remedy one part of the problem.
Yeah.
I think another problem is that people try to tackle every problem. And then again, you're not building a sustainable business model because you're trying to service too many things. So that's why, and this might have shot us in the foot when we were getting investment because the product and solution that we were building was very niche. Like when we tell people what we do, it's like one line and you're like, yeah, I get it. That's cool. It's very simple. Like it's a very complex technology and it's very complicated back end with a lot of moving parts, but we've translated that into a very seamless front end experience and a very seamless product. But that's just us being super niche and focused on one part of the problem that has this potential to scale out into different products. Which, when you tell an investor that, it comes across as too simple and too easy without looking under the hood and understanding the roadmap and that sort of thing. But
I thought that's what they would be going for, though. Simple solutions are often the best ones.
You're doing this dance between simple and niche and huge opportunity. Like doing that is very hard. Finding a big opportunity where you can have a very small and niche product to begin with, and then defining what the path is to get to the big opportunity is like, it's an art in itself, I think. And it's not something that comes easy, especially when you want to do something that you're passionate about, because that might not always have those building blocks, or it might not at the beginning be obvious what that trajectory looks like or what the first product needs to be or whatever.
But would you say that it's something like that? It would just come down to having to really be in it, right? Like, I know that there's a lot of people trying to find solutions. There are a lot of people that find solutions for the industries that they play in, and that is quite common. But then there's also a lot of people that are trying to find a solution in spaces that they're not familiar with.
Yeah, or they're obsessed with the product without the problem. I think we spoke about this last time. There's a lot of people that retrofit a product to a problem, but they're not really passionate about the problem.
Yeah.
So we kind of had this thing where I was super passionate about. We were both actually, because my co-founder is ex-CTO at an energy company, which was interesting because we both kind of clicked on that level. But we both knew that marketplaces were shit. We wanted to build a better alternative in the marketplace solution, but we couldn't really identify what the problem space was yet that we were passionate about. It was too broad of a problem space. So every time we would go to an investor at the very beginning when we were in Antler, it would be, hey, we want to build this product. And they'll be like, what's the problem? And you say this this problem statement, and they'll be like, it looks like you've just built this or come up with this product and retrofitted it to that problem. So we had to completely shift our business like 3 times to get that, to find the actual problem, the niche problem that we were laser focused on and fully passionate about, and then build a product that served that problem based on like interviews with sellers and buyers and actual validation. So I think that in itself is a journey that founders need to go through. And that's not even just for startups. I think that's any business. You need to have a problem and then a product for that problem.
Yeah.
You don't need to you can't just put out a product and hope people buy it. But yeah, that whole thing is another experience that was just completely foreign.
And really understanding how to articulate that as well.
If anything, it was more the articulation, because in your head it's like, yeah, it's a fucking big problem. I care about this space. Like, why are you not like? It's like you just feel like no one's getting you. And then in hindsight, it's like I was just like the community, like in my head, was not being translated on paper or on deck. It was just completely miscommunicated.
So that would be, I guess, the challenge. If you're really in it, and the best solutions are going to be derived from the space that you live and breathe in because you're so intimate with it. But by being that close to it, you see it and you feel it and you live in it, and then you're just like, why don't you get it?
Yeah. And then it's just really dumbing it down. It's like, I think it's called the grandma test or the mum test, where it's like, if your mum doesn't get it, your grandma doesn't get it, you got to rephrase it. Yeah. You just need to make it super easy that your mum would understand in one sentence what you do.
Man, even just beyond that, when you look at other brands, and I've just spoken about Apple, how you give it to a fucking 3-year-old, or you give it to a 93-year-old, they'll figure it out in just the same way, man. Like, to be able to have that level of simplicity to a really complex solution, much like what you guys are doing. Like, you give them an iPad and you think it's just, it's a fucking iPad. But we only think it's just an iPad because we appreciate the simplicity, but we have no idea about the complexity. All of it. Everything has been so carefully considered, so much so it gets to the point where like we don't even think about it anymore.
I almost think that there's elements of that brands need to implement, like
every single time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because I feel like you just shoot from the hip a lot of the time. And that's what you miss. You need to be like, you're a branding guy. You need to be like fully calculated on what people are perceiving your brand as, whether it's a clothing brand, whether it's a fucking real estate agent, whatever it is. You need to be able to resonate with whoever your audience is.
Everything communicates something.
But no one, that's not something I ever thought about with my clothing brands back in the day. Like, it was just kind of like, if I liked it, I'd put it out, which is what a lot of people do.
Yeah, but I don't actually, like, as someone from with a branding background, I used to advocate being really calculative with the way that you do things. But what that opens the doors to is to trying to cater to too many people as well, and to overthinking it. And I like to work with people who are very close to their brands, that are embedded in the space that they're in, and trying to solve a problem for them, right? Because in that way you understand it really well, rather than trying to retrofit it into someone that you just don't understand.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're able to be really intimate with the solution, then you can communicate it in ways that will resonate with you, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't resonate with that person. This is how I think about it now, is that if you get it, then you will eventually bring on people that are aligned with you.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be enough, because that's what you want. It just makes communication easier that way, rather than trying to adopt a persona or project a persona into a brand that you don't identify with, it just makes it all much harder.
I think but a lot of people fall over on that step.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like if you haven't even taken an introspective look to identify what your values are, it's going to be very hard to be able to figure out your brand, your business, what values are you going to bestow in that brand, especially if they're going to be ones that align with you. If you don't know yours, then how are you meant to deal with it in your brand? But dude, it looks like that you guys are really onto something. I think that there's, the opportunity is right there and things are happening. And I love that you're playing in a space that is innovative, but yet addressing a cultural problem and being part of a solution to this bigger picture. It is a fucking monumental problem. And it was so big that it was something that was hidden away from people for so long until, I guess, more recently in the last couple of years, there's been a lot more conversation going on about it. And I think that just through this open dialogue and a lot of bigger brands that are participating in those conversations, it's going to really open up the opportunities for you guys to really develop what you're doing and to just immerse yourself within the cultural space.
Yeah, I think we've come in at an interesting time, which is why there's probably been people that have tried to do what we've done and just failed because technology wasn't up to scratch, the community wasn't up to scratch, wasn't enough integration capabilities. Whereas now we've come in at the perfect time where it's just like stars have aligned and all of a sudden like everyone's interested in this sort of like space. So it's nice to be one of the first in at least our region to kind of make it into a big thing. So yeah, it's exciting times. We've yet to launch, which is they've got some paid users, which is exciting. But launching in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
Oh shit! Wow. So by the time this goes out,
maybe you might be able to go on Instagram and sign up. So
where can people just keep up to speed with what's going on?
Yeah, Instagram's a good place. LinkedIn, we're doing a website refresh next week, tomorrow actually, which is exciting. So we've got a new website launching, which would be awesome. And yeah, if you're interested, just join the waitlist. Yeah,
wicked, dude. Man, looking forward to see what comes off this, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Hey, dude, thanks for jumping on.
Really good chat.